First, I just want to say, yes, I am in uniform, but I really can't be bothered. Anyway, so, that just happened. I'm still reading The Cat Who Came In From the Cold by Deric Longden, chapter 5. Thermal spent the night in Aileen's study. There are better ways of waking up in the morning than having a kitten jump up and down on your face, and so I decided to start off as I meant to go on. He wasn't going to get spoiled for a start. I just made up a simple bed for him on the recliner chair. A travelling rug for a base, surrounded by 3 cushions so that he couldn't fall off, and then I pumped it up and made it all nice and soft. He was going to have to learn to rough it. Aileen had placed a saucer of water for him on her desk, which was a very thoughtful touch, and we each gave him a last pat on the head before we said good night. Do you think I should take his vest off? Aileen thought about it as I turned the chair away from the window so that the light wouldn't wake him too early in the morning. You realise he might not be house trained. I hadn't thought about that. I'd better take his vest off then. No, leave it on. Then at least if he does anything, it won't be all sort of... No, leave it on. Then at least if he does anything, it will be all sort of contained. I didn't want to think about all of that. Since I had brought him in on the shovel, the kitten had put away half a pint of milk, a little chicken, a lot of garlic sausage, and a tin of sardines. So I did what I always do in situations like that. I put it out of my mind and went off to bed. He was up and waiting for me the next morning, his head plunged deep into the saucer as he finished off the last of his water. I walked around and had a look at the other end. Everything seemed to be in order. One of the paper clips had come adrift, giving him the loose and baggy look of a Turkish pasha? Probably pasha. But that apart, he was extremely well turned out, and he had about him the clean-cut air of someone who was already jogged. Showered, and cleaned his teeth. That's what it said. The glasses keep falling down. The sun was shining, and we breakfasted on the desk by the window. Down in the courtyard, 3 cats took advantage of the morning warmth. One sprawled on the dustbin, another sprawled on the top of the one sprawled on the dustbin, and a third looked thoroughly miserable with himself because there was nowhere left for him to sprawl. I drew back the curtain and held Thermal up so that he could see. There, that's what cats do. He wasn't the slightest bit interested. He was mildly surprised that they weren't wearing thermal vests. But that was all. Come on then, let's get this off. I tugged at the knotted sleeves around the back of his neck, and he went berserk. What are you doing? You don't need it anymore. He didn't agree with me and hid behind the letter rack. Come on. Go away. It wasn't the best of hiding places. His ears peeked over the top of Aileen's VAT return, and his tail strayed perilously close to the pencil sharpener. I grabbed him and he made a jump for it. We were both partially successful. I had him by the scruff of the vest, and he dangled in mid-air like the basket from a hot air balloon. Get off. All right. I'm warning you. All right, keep your fur on. I lowered him gently on his legs. I lowered him gently, and his legs were travelling at 30 miles an hour before his feet touched the carpet, and then he was off across the study and out into the hall. I found him sitting under the telephone table, sulking with his back to me. The knotted sleeves had loosened now, and they hung limply from his head, giving him the appearance of a rather forlorn and somewhat disenchanted rabbit. You're being very silly. Push off. What did you say? Wait, no, that doesn't sound right. You're being very silly. Push off. What did you say? Nothing. We broke off diplomatic relations at that point. I went into the kitchen for a second cup of coffee and another slice of toast. He sat under the telephone table and stared at the skirting board. I've always felt that skirting board staring is... I've always felt that skirting board staring is an overrated pastime, and it wasn't long before I became bored with it and strolled into the kitchen to see what all the clattering and scraping was about. He gave the fridge a wide berth as he came around the door. It was cold in there, and the bacon went for you. He was coming apart at the seams. His vest had now wrinkled around his ankles like Nora Batty's stockings, and even Compo would have thought twice before venturing forth in such an outfit. I was on my knees, scraping butter off the carpet, and he came over to help me. We worked together in silence, me with a knife, him with his tongue. The two of us together had it cleaned up in no time. I'm sorry, so am I. I get carried away. I should have asked first. It's always good to clear the air, but that first quarrel takes the steam out of you, and there was a distance between us that hadn't been there before. The Sultana helped take his mind off things. He found it in front of the rubbish bin. It was hiding just under the pedal, and it frightened him at first. It was big for a Sultana, but he had never seen one before. He stalked it for a while. He'd practiced stalking on the smaller leaves in the courtyard, but he would be the first one to admit that he had a lot to learn. The bigger leaves had taught him that. The Sultana was just as cautious. In all probability, it would never have seen a kitten wearing a thermal vest before, but after a tentative poke and a quick run and hide together behind the vegetable rack, they got on famously. Behind the vegetable, they hid together behind the vegetable rack. They got on famously and were soon charging all over the house. That makes more sense. It's easy to laugh at a kitten who falls in love with a Sultana, but it was the very first thing he had ever owned, and we all remember our first bike, don't we? I sorted out my mail on Aileen's desk and carried it into my office. She keeps a tidy desk. Just the essentials, plus cigarettes, lighter, and an ashtray. I need clutter. files, books, dozens of pens, lucky horseshoe, a pair of pliers even,